It's preparing, one sec. And then I'm gonna have to mute it, so give me one sec here. All right, Tom, can you hear me?
I can hear you.
All right.
How about me?
We gotcha. All right.
Okay. So we'll call this 6 o'clock meeting to order for the MCHD meeting. Rob, you want to call roll call?
Craig Wood.
Here.
Jay Harrell, not quite on the phone yet.
Correct. He's joining, yeah.
Dean Matthews,
Here.
Gayla Pop here. Bill Thompson's excused. Robert Dobry, I'm here, and our attorney Tony's here.
Okay. I don't know if we have any other comment?
Not yet.
Not yet.
We might want to move that over here.
Okay.
This way.
Okay. We can move to the consent agenda. Is there any discussion on the consent agenda? From anybody? Hearing no discussion, I like a motion to approve the consent agenda.
I'll make a motion to approve the consent agenda.
All right, any more discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Okay, reports and action items. SHS, are we looking for Tom? You there, Tom?
Yeah, I'm here. Is it my report time?
It is.
It is.
All right, sorry, I'm just getting back to the house, running a bit late. A pretty good month. I think Rick will expand on it. One sec here. All right, pretty good month, and I know Rick's going to talk more about numbers. Feeling pretty good with how things are going in the hospital operationally. Things seem to be moving along safely. All of our COVID-related issues seem to be handled pretty smoothly and safely, and without major extra hospitalization or strain on it. So we're feeling pretty good this month. I really don't have much more to report. I know Tony's out of town today, and I'll hand it over to Rick if he's there, unless you have questions for me.
Any questions for Tom? Muted Tom?
Yep, and I'm double booked tonight, so I'm only going to be able to join you through Rick's presentation.
Okay, Rick, it's
Okay.
up to you.
Okay.
Just want to kind of hit where we are with respect to kind of hit Tony's information real quick on our enclosure. Again, from a surgical standpoint, we've done a tremendous amount of surgeries, and we were pretty much closed the month of April for anything that wasn't emergent. Adding to that, we had a strong month for July. We're still in the process of recruiting a couple of new docs. One is going to be an OB family practitioner. The other individual is going to be a general surgeon. So we're hoping that we can find a general surgeon end of September, early October. We do have a couple of leads. For those of you who don't know, I think we covered this maybe last month in Tony's report, that Dr. Medina is leaving in the middle of September. So Dr. Dennis Lewis joined us in the first part of July, and we'll be looking for another surgeon to complement Dr. Lewis and Dr. Madison. We do have a couple of pretty good OB-GYN candidates. I think one's coming in Friday, if I'm not mistaken. Don't remember the name, but can meet the staff and kind of check the area out. So any questions on anything operationally or physician recruiting wise? Okay, if not, I'll head into finance. Again, strong month of June. Again, we collected about $4.2 million for cash, for patient cash. We did see probably the last of the stimulus. That was 161,000. We did see a market gain in our investments of about $49,000. Gross AR did increase by about $1.1 million, and we were about 90% of prior year. I think we're all looking at things and we're trying to figure out budget, but if we can get back on current path with prior year, that's kind of where our onus is. Inventory decreased, not much, about $4,000. We have prepaid expenses, and that's our amortizations of some of our maintenance contracts, as well as Colorado Hospital Association dues and things like Western Health Alliance dues. Fixed assets, we did put a few assets into service. We had depreciation of about $365,000. So fixed assets declined by about $180,000. We are paying things fairly timely. I think our AP days are less than 30. Payroll liabilities did increase in the month of June by about $121,000. As we've discussed, we have 3 payroll payouts in July, the 3rd, the 17th, and the 31st. But our cash didn't really suffer too much in the month of July. Currently, right now, as of today, August the 12th, we have about 105 days cash on hand. In this report, the numbers changed a little bit, but that's a more real number of where we stand today on August 12th. We did book our stimulus grant as a liability because, again, we're only booking stimulus revenues as we earn them in the PPP. We did have a positive net operational month. June was $6,000. I brought our year-to-date number up to $1.2 million. And EBITDA for June was $500,000, and total year-to-date EBITDA is $4.2 million. And again, we were at 90%, so we saw our total gross patient revenue come up, but it was still below budget by about $1.2 million. And then our total net revenue was about $430,000 less than budget. We came in strong under budget on our provider salaries. However, that's due primarily to us not having an OB on staff to replace Dr. Peak. And our staff salaries were below budget by about $66,000. Contract labor came in under budget at $180,000, so about $60,000 under budget. And benefits were below by $65,000, primarily as a result of people not really, using medical services. Our medical specialist fees came in under budget as well, by about $26,000. Purchase services, and that's when we did a lot of the migrations from the annex building over to the hospital with server rooms and things like that, as well as some of the projects that we've had going on. Supplies, again, they were above budget by $30,000, and a lot of that is trying to have a personal protective equipment of at least 4.5 to 5 months. I think right now we're at 4, trying to get 5 months of PPP. Plus we have the suits, that big hazmat suits with filters and so forth, and then masks and gloves and things like that. Interest expense, $128,000 tied to the amortization schedule. Depreciation, as we discussed earlier, $364,000. The donations, again, that was a sales tax revenue received. Thank you guys. And then for the replacement of the RTD project. Any questions on the narrative? Mr. Dover.
I have a question about days cash on hand.
Yep.
When the dust settles, and we kind of even back out.
Yep.
What are we looking at for that time frame when that's probably going to level back out? What's your projection for where we're going to be sitting at that time?
So we have borrowed about $5.5 million of advanced Medicare funding. So we have they haven't started making us work it off or pay it back yet. That is about 30 days of cash, 32 days cash on hand. So we'd be at about 71 days without that. We're trying to level out somewhere between 71 and 75.
And when do you have to pay that back?
I have no idea.
Okay.
It depends on Congress. And I know that's not a great answer.
Wow.
Well, you don't have an answer.
But it's Congress, so that's a great question, and they haven't really discussed anything. There is some discussion that we've been sharing with everybody. We get a newsletter from a gentleman by the name of Paul Lee. So there is some discussion in the House about just forgiving that, making another stimulus. It's got a little traction, but it's a who knows. It depends. I have no idea. The other thing, we're still in the COVID crisis scenario. So we don't, and more or less under a state of emergency. So we don't, who knows? They may end up just saying, hey, keep that. That's y'all's next stimulus. But I don't know. So like I said, we're at 71 days. And which isn't bad. We're also paying Medicaid back about $30,000 a week. And that just took effect last Thursday. So we're going to pay Medicaid back about 120 grand a month for sins of the past.
Which we still owe. Well, forget it. Okay.
Yeah.
So was the loan part of PPP or a function of the PPP, or is it a different person?
Medicaid.
Yeah.
Medicaid's the sins of the past. The
No,
24.
I'm talking about the loan that we took that you said may be forgivable.
Oh, that's Medicare advance funding.
Okay.
That's just our Medicare advance funding.
Advance funding.
Yes, sir. Yeah. Yeah. So basically that was done March and April. They said, look, if you guys want to advance your Medicare funding, that way you have it in reserve. Then at some point we'll figure out a time where they'll do withholds to pay it back. And they haven't done anything. Probably because it's an election year, my guess. So maybe we'll find something out in March. I'm going to defer to Kelly McKay, who understands politics way better than I want to.
What makes you think that?
Probably because you have a better beat of a pulse with some of the elected officials than I do. I try to hide from them. So exactly. But I mean, my take is by the time you have everybody sworn in January, they may look at taxes, they may look at a bunch of other crap before they get back to the hospitals. And then you'll have a new CMS director, they'll have to go through confirmation. So I'm guessing March, April, I don't know. It's a guess. The logic. Again, from a P&L standpoint, the narrative was based off of pages 6 and 7, our income statement and balance sheets. And again, as we work off what I call either or have forgiveness for our PPP or stimulus, you'll see the debt go down and it go up into other operational revenues. So we'll do that. Page 8 is it shows the sales tax portions versus the and the hospital's payment for the bonds, the bond payment of $294,000. So that's a schedule. So there's $125,000. From a ratio standpoint, because, and that's on the next page. Here you can see where we had 108 days cash on hand. Again, it's dropped to today because we had 3 payrolls. Our payroll average is anywhere from 980 to about 120. So only dropping 3 days cash with an extra $1 million payroll, not bad. Statistics, again, we're close to 90% of where our volumes were on most categories. So not bad. You can see that we're up in surgeries, pretty active with Dr. Jones coming on board. And a lot of our clinic visits are pretty active. So we hit above budget on that. The most important page that I think you guys want to see that the banks have seen is page 11. This is our ratios that shows where we're in covenants, our forbearance covenants. With our return on assets, our asset test, our current ratio, again, days cash on hand, and then our debt service coverage. So we're all above. We are not failing those covenants, is what I'm trying to tell you. This cash for balance sheet, this was a picture in time as of June 30th when we had 113 days. Again, in June, we had, at the end of July, we had 108, and today we have 105. These are our metrics on page 13 that shows if we're collecting our cash, our AR, patient AR, we are. Hospitals at 113% on average, and the clinics are at 99.1. We do have about 5 nurse practitioners and surgeons, inclusive of surgeons, that we're trying to get on contracts and get their AR cleared up. But again, a good month, and that's, ladies and gentlemen, that's all I have. I can tell you this. It's funny me reading this narrative because I just finished July's. July's not bad either.
Do we have any questions for Rick?
I'm not allowed to speak.
Yes, you are.
Yeah, you are, absolutely.
I'm just real pleased that this is not damaged in a significant way, because what I'm reading is a lot of small hospitals are really struggling. So,
Thank you. I mean, we've been blessed, good teamwork. I mean, Dean was very helpful in trying to get us on board for a grant. We appreciate the, working with you guys to try to get there and keep it financially strong. Again, we shared with y'all last month the audit, which was clean. It's not as clean as we want it to be. We still have a few things to work on, but we're getting there. And, we try to manage our cash to the best of our ability and not repeat sins of the past.
All right.
Thank you for the kind words.
Thank you, Rick. Good news.
Yes, sir.
Rob?
Hey, Rick, I just, before Rick leaves and I leave, just want to also make sure everyone understands that when we have our board meetings, we hear from all the different departments and throughout the whole C-suite and beyond. And I continue to be incredibly impressed with everyone from the top down. Tony and Rick have been top notch still through all this. I feel a lot better today than I did weeks ago, where we stand with everything. Listening to Karen and Carrie White make their presentations, I really know that the staff is top notch and they're working hard through this whole situation. And I've also gotten great feedback from people that have been using the hospital for non-COVID related procedures and visits, and they continue to tell. I continue to hear just how clean the hospital is, how well people are treated during all this, and how safe they feel when they're going into the hospital. So kudos again to all of the staff at the hospital.
Thank you, Tom.
All right, I've got to get going here. Everybody take care.
All right, Tom, thank you.
Bye.
So on the financial report, we have $2,471,578.25 in unrestricted cash. This month, the SHS took over the other part of the Mancus Clinic, and in the process of that, they accidentally overpaid. They kind of double paid the rent and for this month. So what we're going to do is just prorate it for the next month and then pay the regular amount after that. Our tax collection this month. The regular sales tax collection is $151,783.23. And the two health services taxes, that's $1,261.58 and $14,639.68.
Big jump.
Yeah.
Well, when you go by those places, you see that line get longer and longer, plus next to the parking lots.
Yeah.
That's all I have on the financial.
Well, it seems to me, I don't understand why, but this COVID issue and shutting down the entire economy for a while, and it's still not fully operational, has not damaged us. I keep hearing about how the states, and Colorado is one of them, are suffering so badly from lack of revenue, and I don't quite understand it. Because I realize the state gets revenue from other things besides sales tax, but sales have not been down.
Well, Morrison County is not shut down.
Well, some businesses have, many of them have not. That's
Yeah,
true.
some of the restaurants have, but as a general practice, mostly the county hasn't, like a lot of counties that are, we just haven't had much of a shutdown.
Some sectors of the economy, retail economy, have actually greatly improved. Those have made up for some of the ones that shut down or backed off. Things like home improvements, Walmart's, Slayton's, those kinds of businesses here locally are way up. So I think it just depends on the industry, and I think the COVID issue has caused kind of some very different changes, drastic changes to our overall income production, the tax, and therefore the taxes. So it's been interesting, but your point is correct. I mean, absolutely hasn't been a real impact in Washington County financially. An impact in a lot of ways. We're all wearing masks, but financially it hasn't been.
And for some of us, that even improves our looks.
And there are some industries that would disagree and say, yeah, it's been devastating to some industries.
Any more questions for Rob on the financials or comments? No, I guess facilities. Anyway, Ralph, I'm gonna let
I have
you.
a quick foundation thing.
Oh, okay. Oh, did I skip that?
Yeah.
Oh, go ahead, Rob.
Our foundation, this month's foundation meeting is actually tomorrow. But we have had some applications in for the in-hospital grant that we've been working with. So we'll be awarding another one of those for this quarter tomorrow. That's all I have. That's okay. Thank you.
Rick. Okay, Ralph, facilities.
Thanks, Dean. I'll take this mask off first. So we've had three little projects going on, one not so little, but the OB nurses station remodel is complete, except for a door into the nursery being switched out because the door that came and was put up didn't have a light in it, didn't have a window in it. That should be replaced in the next month or so. The MRI chiller, the new chiller was started up on a week ago today on the 5th of August. There were a few issues during that startup, but all in all, it went pretty smoothly. None of their subcontractors were able to get them resolved within, I don't know, 3 or 4 hours. Right now, we have the old chiller and the new chiller. Either one of them can be run, bypassing one or the other. So there's a redundant system there now that if there were problems with either one of them, the other one could pick up the capacity that needs to be provided. There's still a little bypass piping that needs to be done that will be completed over the Labor Day weekend when we're working on RTU1. Talk about RTU1 just a little bit. We're still prepping for the RTU1 replacement over the Labor Day weekend. We would actually start on Wednesday night, September 2nd, or Wednesday afternoon at 4 o'clock, September 2nd. And our plans are to be done by the following Monday night, September 8th, to be ready to start back up with surgeries on the morning of Tuesday, September 9th. We had Train and QEC quality electrical controls on site this week, and next week they're getting the controls into the unit and wired up. They're going to do what programming they can now before it ever gets set on the roof. During the process of getting RTU1, the plans for getting RTU1 replaced, it was noted by Rob Owens, that there are some exhaust fans and a recirculation pump that feed the OR suite that have to be moved to the emergency power side of the power supply. That work was going to take place in one of the upcoming tiers. So it was planned for and is in the design, but it wasn't going to take place with RTU1 here. Now it looks like there's a benefit to getting it done now. So there are some exhaust fans and a recirculation pump that will be put on a new panel that will be put in the electrical room. And that work will be done with RTU1 while the electrician is on site doing the RTU1 work. That's going to add $14,000 to what we're paying for right now. As I said, it's work that would have come down the road. It wasn't work that was necessary as part of RTU1. So this was work that was just part of the electrical upgrades in the overall plan. But there are benefits to doing it right now, so we've decided to go forward with that. I'll update you about the retaining wall just a little bit. I passed around 2 documents. I passed around Nunn's proposal for rebuilding the wall, and I passed around the proposal from Western Technologies for the quality control testing. Those 2 costs total about $146,000. That's the vast majority of what the repair of the wall is going to cost. It looks to me like the entire wall needs to come down. I think there could be an argument made for maybe a 20-foot section on this end of it being left in place, but I'm not sure how practical that is just from the construction standpoint. So my feeling is that the entire wall should come down and be replaced. There was some questioning about that in some emails this afternoon, Kelly, from the insurance company saying they were going to send their own adjuster out and do do an evaluation of it. So I have not tried to get a structural engineer to come take a look at that. And I can if that's something the board wants to do. But it's my feeling that that wall should come down completely and be rebuilt. A part of that, what happens is that slope will have to be laid back. You'll be taking out part of that parking lot up on top. You'll be taking out curb and gutter. You'll be taking out all of the landscaping along that wall. And that's all in Nunn's cost here. So the contract that we have prepared with Nunn is a guaranteed maximum price. It's a CMGC, Construction Manager as General Contractor contract. It's the same form of contract that we've used on all the work in the past, over the past 3 or 4 years, however long it's been. That is it's a guaranteed maximum price, but it's also a cost based on cost. So it's a cost plus a fee. So if there are some savings from Nunn's price of $140,000 as they get in there, and there are savings, then those savings come back to, in this case, whoever's paying the bill, the insurance company ultimately. But I think that's the smart way to go. That's worked to our benefit in the past. Same basic contracts that we've used in the past. I've looked them over. Kelly has looked them over. I'll just let Kelly comment as he sees fit. So I think we're looking at someplace in the neighborhood of $146,000 to $150,000 to replace that wall. That includes my fee also, or my fee will be in that number. So that's how you get it up to around $150,000. I've got copies of these contracts that can be executed tonight if that's the board's preference, and Nunn will start procuring materials immediately. There's a delegated design that needs to be done that'll be done locally here, and that's required by the city. There'll be a building permit required by the city. So we'll get Nunn started on all that immediately, and hopefully that wall will be done back up by the end of October. We're estimating 6 weeks to remove what's there and then replace it. So
are we basically gonna pay the bill and then submit to the insurance company, or are we submitting invoices directly to the insurance company?
We'll pay it, we'll be responsible for paying it. We're working in concert with SHS, but there is liability policy for the negligent driver of $100,000. They have opposed that and then have kind of backed away a little bit, deciding that they may need to look at it a little further. But we think they'll end up having to pay the $100,000 if we agree to resolve with the negligent driver for those policy limits. Then the surplus of the excess would be covered through SHS's policy, liability policy. I've been working with John Brooks on it, and we're not to a point where we're completely resolved, but we think that there probably is coverage, most certainly, in my opinion, coverage through our SDI policy. So I think we're in good shape. As Ralph said, I did look over the proposed contract. It fits all of our criteria, and I think it's acceptable as presented.
We just will get a motion to move forward with this, and then can start with the contract executed.
I think it would be good.
Well, I'll make a motion that we direct Ralph to go forward with getting the necessary contract signed and the work started to get this.
more discussion on that? All those in favor? Okay. Move forward with that one. Ralph, anything else on the facilities?
I talked to you today about how I've been billing Dean. I've been, since when we started this wall thing and going back to when the walk-in clinic flooded, I've been billing by the hour, the $125 an hour. Now that we know pretty much what that's going to cost over there and how long it's going to take, I'd be willing to go back to the 4.5% if that's your pleasure. I think it's probably about a wash either way. But it's easier for me if I don't have to keep track of hours. So.
Well, and like we talked, it's probably be an easier line item for them to see a percentage of what to an hourly rate. So I'm fine with that.
So am I.
Yeah.
Best thing to do on it under the circumstances now.
Yeah.
I do have one question, Ralph. Has the city mentioned anything of what they want us to do there? Like an engineered wall or anything?
It is going to be an engineered wall. It'll be a design done by a structural engineer.
Then basically, we don't have to have anybody else come out and look at that, structural engineers.
We don't have to.
No.
And I mentioned that because if there is some question by the insurance company whether the whole wall needs to come down or not, then I would recommend that we do bring a structural engineer out, pay a couple grand to have a structural engineer come and look at it and render a decision. But me going over there looking at it, I wouldn't be satisfied with not taking the whole thing down.
Bottom line is the insurance company won't decide that issue. It'll be decided by us and our experts. And Ralph thinks that's what needs to be done, and they go into it. And that's the way it'll be done. We're confident, legal counsel, that 100% of the total cost is going to be reimbursed through insurance. So we need that wall back up in proper construction. Exactly.
Okay, that's what we'll do then. Thank you.
Irrigation. So I met with Keith Evans last week and looked at where the access, there was multiple points for access. He seems interested in, if we don't go through their users association, that he's got enough shares and excess capacity that he might just sell us his portion without going through their user association. That's rights that they have to sell them. So the access cost is $10,000 to access that pipeline. He also offered the 50% future access that we might, if we wanted to do that, buy. So we'd be buying 5 shares. We'd be buying futures on another 2.5 shares for $5,000. $5,000. So, and the thought that I had was that we're going to be bringing that line right through the subdivision. If we have people that want to tie in, Bill, that we could let them tie into that line if we wanted to buy more shares and have more water shares. So it was kind of a good thought that I had. Once those shares are gone in that pipe, they're gone. We wouldn't be able to access. So we'll need to make a decision tonight as the board, and then let Kelly start executing contracts with Keith to get that happening, so we can get him to sign off, and then we can start looking at getting bids. I've talked to a couple contractors to get bids for that. So it'll be quite the project. We're gonna have to come through a city right away, but he reserved utility easements to come through that city part. So we can get through that pretty easy. And we'll put a water meter on where his access is and have water up there. So my biggest thing I'll need to know when I'm getting bids is where we're gonna tie into. I don't know if we're gonna be tying in where the sprinklers are right now. There's that sprinkler riser right by the front entrance. I assume that's where we tie in. So that was my conversation with Keith. So I don't know what the board feels. If anybody has any questions for me?
Reasonable enough to me, doesn't it?
I could just, yeah, I might just add a little bit here. And I think this may have been covered somewhat in the last meeting. But since that meeting, I know Dean went and explored a possibility that Keenan was working on to see if we could buy or perhaps have a shared contribution from the county for the water. We actually still have to acquire the water that we want. And it looked like a potential deal where we might be able to use some county water. And I think their initial response was real positive, but on further review, they decided that they weren't inclined to share any of that water with the hospital district. So we'll have to acquire those 5 shares probably at a price of about $5,000 a share. And I know Keenan spoke with Brandon over at MPI yesterday. I don't know what the outcome of that was, but we need authorization from the board once those shares are located to go ahead and make that acquisition if that can be done.
We did that last meeting.
You did do that at the last meeting. You approved it. We haven't purchased the water.
Yeah, we haven't heard the water, but we have.
You already made the resolution pass.
It's in the minutes.
Yeah, up to.
All right. I apologize. You've already got that down. Ian told me it was discussed last meeting, and I didn't notice that in the meeting. It is something that we'll be able to do. Cost a little more, but we're looking at about $25,000 for the water.
Yeah, we moved and seconded to approve that Mr. Levitt pursue purchase of 5 shares of MPI on behalf of the district up to $30,000.
Yes, so that's been approved for local water. So mainly it's just getting the contract executed with Keith to purchase the access. And if the board wants to purchase the 50% future, the additional would be additional 2.5 shares. So.
And that, to be clear, is access in the pipeline.
That's just access. We can get access onto the pipeline. And then we have, if we do the additional amount for future shares, we would be able to just buy shares and get it. We wouldn't have to pay any more access to the pipeline. We would already have that access into the pipeline.
Well, is there a possibility that we'll need more water in the future?
Well, you can never have enough water. But that being said, if we were to sell some portions of our subdivision around here, we could actually lease water back to people that wanted to have water access. So even like right now, we could talk to the nursing home if they were interested. We could lease water to them or let them use the water, or however we decided to do that. There's some options there to have that water. It could be a selling point if they would have irrigation water, if they wanted it or access to it. So it's just a thought. Once those options are gone, those options we would be able to access that. I know that Keith told me that the city did the same thing. They bought their water and the access for future use or whatever reason that they might want on that. And that's how they set that pipeline. They set that pipeline up that way. I hadn't heard of that before. It must be common. I don't know.
Really common. They're just acquiring. They're making sure that it's sized 50% larger than what they're using at that point for future expansion.
And that's what he said, it's up to the people, each person was able to get those future shares, they can either sell them to somebody or they can use them to buy more water. It's kind of their option. They can sell them to somebody else in the pipeline or something like that, so.
Do we have any legal issues of buying something and sitting on it, selling it later for a profit sort of a thing? You know, that's not what we're here for. Is there a legal issue there?
There's no legal issue unless we got to a point where we were trying to do that for profit. I mean, if we were intentionally going out and yeah, I mean, it was the same thing with our subdivision we created. It was done not for profit. It was done hopefully to break even, but to generate space for other medical facilities. And that would be the same thing. There wouldn't be a problem if we did something, we charge a little more than we paid for it. If we could show that was associated with other administrative costs and expenses.
So we're talking about selling, possibility of selling to some part subdivision, like it's not to Joe Smith over across the road.
And we don't want, that certainly isn't the focus of this project, and I wouldn't think that would be, I think Dean was just pointing out that could be an option if we decide we have too much water or there's not. Certainly, we always have the right to sell water if it looks like we have more than we need, if that opportunity is out there. But 5 shares of water is quite a bit of MVI water for no more landscaping and acreage that we have currently. And I think, again, we know, as Dean pointed out also, that there are other lots that might need it. They're within our space, and there might be a reason to lease some of that back to facilitate them keeping their lots free.
Yeah, I wouldn't anticipate we would ever want to sell more. It would be more of a tie-in for a flat fee to do their own watering on there. It's the same point that the county had. When they first thought that they might sell water, I was a little surprised, to be honest. When I went in and met with the county commissioners, they decided they didn't want to sell that water. And you just don't want to sell water if you don't have to. And they want to hold on to it for the fairgrounds. They're thinking they might use some irrigation at the fairgrounds. And so it makes sense. And they said something about possibly leasing it, but they've already got it all leased out right now. So I don't know that we would want to lease. I think we would want to probably own it outright. So we didn't lose it. It'd be a hard thing to lose it once you get used to it.
Well, it sounds like a good idea to me, but quite frankly, I don't know enough about this to really feel confident in making a motion.
I'll make a motion to approve the expenditure to buy capacity in the pipe, as well as the additional capacity. What was the total amount? Was that 15,000?
It was 50% of what we're buying, so another 2, and it should be another 5,000.
15,000.
15,000 total.
Yeah. Okay. Any more discussion? All those in favor? I will, I'll start looking for a couple, 2 or 3 contractors to give us a price on that. Try to get them this fall if we could, so it'd be ready to go in the spring. So I don't have anything else on the irrigation. Anybody else have any more questions? The notice, the backflow, I thought the weeds, I thought that was taken care of.
It is, but I just wanted to see about the possibility of kind of seeing if we can smooth that process a little bit and ask the city to send them not just to us, but also to Rob Owens. So that, because he's getting them eventually, it's just like we're playing telephone to get them to him as it goes to our PO box, and then we get emails, and then we send it on to Bridget. So I wanted to ask the city to send, since they manage the facility, to have and at least get them at the same time that we get them. If that was something that, I mean, I don't even, they may say no, they may say they're not the property owner, so we won't do it, but I at least wanted to bring it up as an option. And I'd be happy to give them a call and take care of that.
Okay, Kelly, I guess it's.
Just a couple of little updates regarding some legal issues. The directions board provided last week or last month on the Mancus Clinic, Dr. Schritzel's vacation of that property and SHS's acquisition of the additional lease space has been completed. We did amend their lease and it's been executed, finalized, subject to the discussion Rob's already mentioned about the little bit of a discrepancy in terms of how the rent was started into play, and that's all pretty clear and resolved. I think also there's a resolution that the bank needs for Fred, I think, or Rob, I'm not sure which of you guys.
I got it.
Got that.
So I need James' signature, or Jay and Bill's signatures. So,
That's all I have today, unless there are questions.
Actually, I do have a question, but it's not for you, it's probably for Andrew, we've seen. We just got through remodeling that building, we're gonna have to do it again, aren't we?
We're doing.
Okay, SHS is doing, but it is going to have to be done again, is it not?
Yes, ma'am. I mean, I don't, Russ, did we talk about that I mean, basically, so I think it's the last numbers I saw, it's about $20,000 or so for the remodeling and the walls and things like that. And then where there's areas where it's carpet, we're going to either use some kind of tile or laminate to kind of COVID proof it. And then just kind of make the flow better. Rob and Bridget have better words than me, but to answer your question, yeah, and I think it's about 20 grand that we're going to do as a leasehold improvement. If that makes sense to y'all.
Are you gonna be redoing anything that was done previously, or is
I
that,
have no idea.
you don't know? Is that kind of what you're wondering about dealing with?
Well, yeah.
Redoing it again?
It just seems like such a shame, I mean,
I think
that's the way it is.
from a infection control standpoint, we're trying to yank out carpet in inpatient care areas as we can find, just, because it makes sense. But I don't think, I think that may be the most things that are impacted, or having easier wipe down counters that are more, Mark kind of weighed in on part of this. And I basically I was listening and then I heard 20,000 and then I perked back up and then I went back. So multitasking.
So I hate to even ask this question, but is there any, and I've never been in the building, is it an old enough building to have any asbestos flooring or ceiling tile or drywall mud, or does any of that need to be tested?
I don't think we're going that extensive.
The ceiling tiles are very.
Ceiling tile is always, is put in after.
Yeah.
Yeah, because that's, I gotta go back. God, I go clear back to 2001. We had it checked, I believe. And we were cleared with it. Something in this brain says we did. Now, Charles Hubbard was the architect on there, and somebody that he knew was certified to check the stuff, and they didn't charge us anything for it. And we were cleared on that. Everything that's in the area where SHS is now has been replaced anyway, the whole thing. And in the side where Dale is, there's not that much there. And The only thing is basically is the drywall. And if I remember right, Dr. Aiken did some stuff working that at that time. Because he was there then.
I just happened to talk to him last week, and as of early August was 40 years from when we opened that, his.
Yeah.
1980,
He,
I was too. I mean, no, I wasn't. I was not.
well, when he left, those people cried over there. Because of the type of man he is, the doctor and everything. So, but we got it, it's ours now. And it's working good from what I understand. I don't know, I haven't heard one word one way or another. So that's when I don't hear anything, it thinks that must be running pretty good.
Yeah.
Okay. Anybody else have anything for the board tonight? If not, we'll entertain a motion to adjourn.
I so move.
Okay. Anybody second?
I'll second you.
Okay. All those approved? Okay. Well, thank you, everybody.
Second service meeting we've ever had.
I'll need your signature on these
Okay.
agreements.
You and I made a draft MCHD change. We talked about moving it away from BCI. I was gonna work with Rob on it. It's okay to make sure that what I'm building works for you guys. So you guys don't have to keep. paying
They're doing well, thank you.
price to
Yeah.
BCI.
Yeah, they're,
I'll just
I
get
was
with
like I
Rob
said,
and
he's
make sure
gonna be in
that
the
he's got
10 or
everything.
8 to 10 man day.
There's a lot on there that's like,
So he may
it
be
makes
first
sense
few
when we're
months,
doing
so he's learning to tackle any
construction,
bars.
it's just waste. I think I can fit it all in one.
He can't look for me.
It's really simple.
Okay. That's
But now they're in camp,
Is that
so
okay with you?
it may be, he probably dropped 50, 10 months.
I didn't,
Yeah.
I didn't publish
But
it.
they're, I
because
mean,
I'm
they're
gonna
taking
need,
good care of them, they're feeding them well, and
I'm gonna need ours.
they're in their own bubble.
That's it. They are in their own bubble, that's right.
So,
That's where they belong.
yeah. I mean, you know, so the colleges are taking good care of them, and they've got, tell me when you kill us so I can expound a little bit more to Fred.